Day 23. Mike and Mary, business as usual.
With an asterisk.
Oh, keep working, but let's do it safely.
That's for
and
sure.
And that means virtually.
And if you are working, you probably have encountered a buyer or two during this pandemic. Someone that you would normally perhaps meet at a house to show them the house, meet at your office or Panera Bread to sit down and say, okay, this is my process for selling properties. This is how I work with buyers. Well, if you are working, and boy, we really hope you are, that's the reason we're getting up and working every day, is to keep you working. And if you are doing that, when you are doing that, and you meet a buyer, you need to be sitting down and giving them the lay of the land, taking control and building relationship.
Chances are, though, you're going to be using a web-based platform.
Right.
Like Zoom or a Google Hangout. Something like that, where they can see and hear you, you can see and hear them, because we're going to keep working safely. So we've invited them to come to a meeting about how to buy a house today.
That's really neat, isn't it? If you think about that, we have a student recently who said she was working with a buyer and he had encountered 3-4 other agents and said to her, you know, you're the only one that offered to sit down and explain the process to me. So that's, of course, the first step. Of course, that's what every buyer needs, to understand that you have a system and for you to sit down and explain what it is. And we can just do that on, FaceTime or any other electronic system where we can see one another.
So we're going to walk you through the system we taught you in the program. It's a track. Remember, dialogue, it's a track. It's not the words you choose, it's what you accomplish each step of the way. And we begin, of course, with breaking the ice, a little rapport, gratitude, thanking them for showing up on time.
And then it's time for the POCA. Now, if you were in class with us, you know POCA stands for Preview of Coming Attractions. You spell that P-O-C-A, okay? So we're going to get control of that buyer by saying, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, before we begin, would it be okay if I showed you how I work? In other words, we get permission to begin the work part.
And you remember every word in that sentence is so carefully crafted psychologically to have the right effect. Use their name, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Say before we begin. That keeps their defensiveness down. May I? Good manners. Boy, do good manners ever set you apart from everybody else. May I show you, not tell you, show you how I work.
Thanks, Floyd, for inventing great dialogue. So we begin with that, and then we reassure.
That?
That
I didn't schedule this meeting with you to talk you into working with me just so I could have someone else to work with. No. The only reason I'd want you actually to even consider hiring me is because you're convinced I'm the best agent to help you go through with your plans. Fair enough?
You say that different than me, but I like that.
No pressure. Yeah. How do you say that?
I say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, before we begin, may I kind of explain to you how I work? First thing I'd like to do is reassure you that I didn't ask for us to meet today so that I could talk you into something or put pressure on you, cause you to buy a house that is not right for you. It's the last thing I'd ever do. So just want you to know you won't get pressure from me.
Yeah, and I say what I say because a lot of people are going to use an agency agreement with these buyers. And that's really what we're looking for in the end result.
So keep in mind, it's not the words you use, it's what you try to accomplish. So reassure is to set their mind at ease, okay? It's just one of the steps in the process. And after that,
if you remember the Wickman method of dialogue selling, one of the ingredients is fear of loss, which is a greater motivator
than opportunity to gain.
Right. We're going to introduce the fall-through list, which we took the liberty of printing out to show them. Yes. Are you familiar with the fall-through list?
You better stop, because not everybody calls it a fall-through list. We generally think of that as a back on the market list.
The bomb list.
Right, but we just gave it a new name.
Right.
We think of it as sellers who had to put their house back on the market. But you know what it also is? It's also a list of buyers who fell in love with the property, thought they were going to move in, and didn't. And that is the definition of a fall-through list. Do the dialogue, would you?
So first we introduce the fall-through list. Are you folks familiar with the fall-through list?
Why, no, we're not.
Well, it's a list of people like you who sat with a real estate agent like this and then went out and saw houses and got excited about one and made an offer and negotiated and came to agreement with the seller. And then they went home and they started packing and they hired a moving van. They told all their friends and family and got really excited, only to have their hopes dashed when it all fell through because somebody didn't do their job. And these folks all have two things in common. May I share with you what they are?
Oh, please do.
Yeah, the first is that disappointment. They didn't get to move in. But the second was, and this is my opinion, these folks and their agent shouldn't have agreed to work together in the first place. They picked the wrong agent.
So,
That's the fall through.
I like that.
Two things in common. And then what do? We tell them why we're showing them this list.
Why are we showing them this list?
Because we want to prevent this from happening to you. So to do that, we have a process we follow whenever I meet with a new client for the first time. So with your permission, I'd like to show you how I work. And if it's okay with you, we'll just do things one step at a time. And I find if we can, it takes all the guesswork out of our decision whether or not we want to join forces. Fair enough?
Wow, you're really good at that.
I'm trained.
I think you should do the whole thing one time straight through. Would you mind? I'll role play with you.
Maybe.
You should do this at home.
Oh, that's right. Grab your 590-10 partner and do this.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Yes. Well, thanks for joining. Appreciate you being here on time. And just to get things started, I just wanted to ask you a quick question before we even begin. Would you mind if I showed you how I work when I work with a buyer?
Oh, no, of course.
Because I did offer to show you the process of buying a home today, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me just reassure you up front. I didn't call this meeting to talk you into working with me just so I could have someone to work with. There's only one reason I want you folks to hire me.
All right.
Even consider it because you're convinced I'm the best agent to help you go through with your plans.
Okay.
Are you two familiar with what we call the fall-through list?
No.
Oh, well, I took the liberty to print some of them out for you. This is a list of people who, like you, sat with a realtor and like you are going out to see homes, either virtually or live. And what happened was they found one they really liked
Okay.
and made an offer, put a deposit down, negotiated price and terms with the seller, came to an agreement, scheduled a closing date, went back home, packed their stuff, hired a moving van, told all their friends and family, only to have something go wrong and fall through the cracks because the system wasn't in place.
Okay.
So, all these people on this list have two things in common.
All right.
The first is that disappointment. They didn't get to move in. But
Okay.
the second, in my opinion, they picked the wrong agent. So I want to prevent this from happening to you. To do that, I have a process I go through whenever I meet with a new client for the first time.
Okay.
So with your permission, I'd like to show you that process. And if it's okay with you, we'll just do things one step at a time. And I figure that way it'll take all the guesswork out of whether or not we ought to join forces. Fair enough?
You bet.
All right. There you go.